Spilling the Beans digital health podcast is aimed at members of the digital health community globally, with guests from the United Kingdom, Australia and the United States. The podcast is available through all major podcast distributors as well as on YouTube. The show is sponsored by Woodrow Mercer Technology and Woodrow Mercer Digital Health.
Hi everyone, hope you're doing well. Welcome to Spill the Beans podcast. My guests this week are Ben and Eric. They're the founders of Cellen Therapeutics. So Cellen is a really interesting company. It's an innovative platform, kind of on the cutting edge of pharmaceutical supply chain, distribution, manufacture within pharmaceuticals, drug manufacture, so many different facets to it. And it's medical cannabis. So it's something that a lot of us might not know that much about. And it's really interesting to hear from the guys as to how they kind of navigate through the difficult structures, obviously being outside of the NHS, being a private business, but still having to manufacture and distribute a product which is absolutely essential to those who really do need it the most, because their ailments are currently not being serviced by traditional pharmaceuticals. So it was really interesting to sit down with these guys. I hope you enjoy it too. I hope you enjoy it. Take it away. Great. Well, thanks so much for taking the time then, guys. Thanks very much, Ben and Eric. It's nice. This is the first one we've done with three people, so touch wood, it goes well. But how's everything going with you? Whereabouts in the world are you guys right now?
Well, I'm in London. I'm in my home, and Eric is in the Cotswolds.
Ah, perfect. I grew up in the Cotswolds, actually. We haven't spoken about that yet. Whereabouts in the Cotswolds are you?
So we're in a place called Brinkenworth, close to Malmesbury.
Oh, I know Malmesbury.
Yeah.
One thing I've discovered as an adult is I definitely didn't do enough of the Cotswolds when I lived there for 21 years or something like that. But it's a beautiful part of the world.
Oh, it's absolutely beautiful. I just wish I could have explored it more. But given this current circumstances, it's been difficult to do too much of that.
Have to put a pin in that for now. But there's worse places to be in isolation, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Great. Well, obviously, Cellen has been growing a lot in the over the past sort of couple of years. Can you guys tell me a little bit more about how the idea got started and where you kind of got to in this point in your journey so far?
So Cellen was started the end of 2018, beginning 2019. It's something that I've been thinking for a while with Eric. And we decided to create this company in order to help and support patients with chronic condition that have an unmet clinical need, and to be able to do that through medical cannabis. The main idea is think about patients. So if we take one patient in particular, let's imagine a hypothetical patient that has a very severe condition called Dravet syndrome, which is a very rare disease, which can be responsible for hundreds of epileptic seizures every day. And this patient doesn't respond to any of the 13 anti-epileptic drugs on the market. That's what Dravet syndrome does. And there's many families with children that have Dravet syndrome, and what they've been doing for years is taking their children to the Netherlands to be able to access medical cannabis to stop the seizures. And a patient on medical cannabis can go as low as 0 seizures a month.
Wow.
And that experience has led us to think that now that the law has changed in the UK, and now that in 2018, the scheduling of medical cannabis went from Schedule 1, completely illegal, to Schedule 2, being able to be prescribed in a very particular setting. We've decided to be able to support those patients, and we do that through Cellen.
Amazing. So, obviously there's laws are different and legislation is different in every country. When you were going through this journey, did you kind of take a blueprint from somewhere else and implement it yourself? Was there fresh ideas that you brought around? It doesn't seem like the easiest thing to kind of roll out. Obviously, it's an important thing to have for these patients, but in terms of actually getting it going, that must have been quite challenging.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, it certainly was. And I think what we're doing quite differently from the rest of the market is if you look at, the rest of the market, what they're doing is doing an import and distribution model. So basically what that means is they're importing final products from one of the LPs in either Canada or Israel or somewhere else. What we're actually doing is a compounding model. So what we are actually doing differently is we're actually importing APIs, the active pharmaceutical ingredients, and then we have contract manufacturers here in the UK that we have a relationship with and do the actual production of the medicine here in the UK. And the advantages we gain from that is one is we're able to do much more sort of bespoke, tailored type of manufacturing for patients. And that, I think we'll talk a little bit about, how that sort of links into digital healthcare and digital health, but it certainly gives us an advantage in using data to drive the actual real time manufacturing of the final products. So that's where we set ourselves a little bit different from the sort of traditional import distribution model.
Yeah, and I guess just before we go down the sort of technology side of things, I mean, I can't imagine as a parent or a patient or whoever might be your consumer of this product that it's going to be. It seems quite expensive to have to go to the Netherlands and get all of this kind of stuff. I mean, has that sort of filtered down through a benefit to them having everything a bit more local?
Definitely. We have a very different supply chain, as Eric explained. And when you think about the cost of medication before, as up to last year, those families that would go to the Netherlands would have to pay around £2,000 per month in medication. And that is just the cost of medication. That is not the loss of income related to taking days off for sick patients. That is not the loss of income of having to go, and the cost of going to the Netherlands. And we've been able to bring that cost down by almost 70%. And now we are providing a service where we just deliver the medication to your home for a third of the cost that it used to be. And it's made locally, it's tailored for you. And that is a great improvement for our patients.
So when you say tailored for you, I mean, is that like for each individual patient or?
So we have the capacity. Because we have made this very close loop, very local manufacturing cycle, we have the capacity to tailor batch by batch the oil. Let's think about a patient that at a certain concentration doesn't have a lot of therapeutic effect. It's not working enough. Then you increase the concentration and then it does work, but there's many side effects added to it. Usually in the normal pharmacopoeia, you would have 2-3 dosages and that's all you can do. We have the capacity to tailor that. We can do any concentration. We don't have to do only, let's say, for example, 10 milligrams or 20 milligrams. We can do 10, 10.1, 10.2, etc., etc. And we can go as high as 300 milligram per milliliter and as low as 1 milligram per milliliter. So we have the capacity to do absolutely a tailored medicine for your exact metabolism and your exact condition.
I mean, that's obviously a huge benefit to have, personalized medication for such a sort of debilitating illness that, sounds fantastic. So tell us a bit more about the technology behind it then. I mean, how have you gone around and tell us about the people as well that have created this amazing platform?
Sure. I think maybe just to take a step back as well before we talk a little bit about that is, one of the things that we set out when we founded Cellen is to be a sort of a research and scientifically driven organization, right? And one of the big calls from the NHS and the sort of the broader stakeholder community was that we needed to provide enough evidence on the efficacy of the medicine and also sort of the cost benefit analysis around that, right? So what we've actually done is we're one of the founding members of a project, an initiative called Project 2021. And the goal of that particular project is to provide medical cannabis for 20,000 patients in the UK, thereby creating Europe's largest single source of data to actually answer those two questions. So what is the efficacy of the medicine and what are the cost benefit and what's the cost benefit analysis around that? For us, that's where sort of that data and that tech component really starts, because obviously what we're about is using that using that data to be able then to drive the manufacturing process itself. So to what Benjamin was alluding to, just to give you a very simple example, is you might have certain patient groups that will have or require a higher dosage of, for example, CBD and much less THC. That with that data, we are then able to make that personalization a lot more effective and actually start to do some predictive analysis on what do we think the right dosage is for a particular patient group. And they will be pretty different depending on what pathology we're treating, and as Benjamin mentioned, the sort of metabolism of patients, but also other factors can play into that. So that's where we are looking at marrying sort of the technology component with the sort of manufacturing and pharma component.
Yeah, absolutely. And then have you got like an enormous team behind this? Like, it seems like quite a significant operation. Obviously, this is the biggest podcast we've done so far with 3 people. Is that replicated in the rest of the business?
No, we're currently a small, nimble team. So we have a very talented team. So it's myself and Benjamin that are the co-founders, and then we have a head of product, and we have a marketing development lead as well. But I think what the beauty of our model is that we're actually not trying to do everything ourselves. We're not trying to create or reinvent the wheel. What we're actually doing is partnering with the best-in-class partners in the industry. So to take an example, we don't want to create an online pharmacy. There's a tremendous amount of good online pharmacies in the UK. So it's about really finding the right partners that share our values, that have the right capabilities, and integrating and trying to build this together with them. So we've been lucky in that sense. So we've had some really good partnerships that we've employed to do this.
We're also very lucky to have an incredible scientific board that provides us incredible insight. We have professors from Israel, and Israel is the leading country in the world in terms of medical cannabis. It's the first country in the world who provided cannabis as a medicine. We have leading specialists from the UK in data management and data scientists in order to be able to really benefit from all the data that we gather from that study to be able to create the most ad hoc medicine.
So, I mean, it sounds like you guys have kind of this obviously a very well thought out, business model, and, I suppose the impact to the end user is enormous. You must have come across some kind of roadblocks along the way, or at least speed bumps, Can you talk us about anything that kind of springs to mind and kind of how you overcame those?
Well, I think I wouldn't so much call it a sort of a roadblock per se, but I think we need to be mindful of what the pandemic is really doing to healthcare in general and digital health. Pretty much overnight, the healthcare system has started to migrate to be digital, and we've seen that, and across the board. And for us, it certainly means we need to adopt our thinking and our model. Whereas, and to give you some very concrete examples, traditionally to get a prescription, or when you go see a specialist in chronic pain, it's very common that you go to a physical clinic. But that's changed pretty much overnight, where now everything is done remotely. It's a remote consultations. And that means our model also has to adapt this clinics and partners remotely. So that's one of the things that, we're thinking through. And I don't think necessarily it means that the world's going to go back to what it used to be. It's what's the world going to be from here on, even though we start to have sort of reduced measures in terms of the lockdown, but it's really thinking what the new normal is in healthcare, and particularly in digital healthcare. So that's certainly been an interesting challenge for us. But so far, I think we've maintained the sort of principles of really trying to be there for our patients, right? That's the most important thing. And we've been able to secure, the supply chain, so we have been able to continue to deliver to patients throughout this period, which is something we take great pride in.
Well, I know and I'm sure our listeners won't mind me mentioning, well, I'm sure you won't mind me mentioning to our listeners that you have actually delivered these things yourself when appropriate.
When needed.
When needed, yeah.
We definitely have a very patient-centric team, and everyone is focused on making sure that every patient gets what they need and get it at the right moment. And so Eric took upon himself to go drive to a prescriber's home during the lockdown to pick up a prescription, because if we had waited, that prescription would have arrived too late to the pharmacy. The patient would not have had its medication in time. And so it's absolutely true. Eric drove for 5 hours one day just to pick up a prescription, drive it then to the pharmacy, and making sure that the patient gets its medication.
Yeah, but I think importantly, what it does highlight is exactly this issue that, you know, when the whole system goes, you know, almost in a very short period of time tries to transition into digital, there are hiccups along the way, and there are these things where, you know, traditionally you have to have a physical pink slip that you send via the post. But if the post doesn't work, or for some reason it's not arriving in time, you know, we need to find solutions in this new world, and that's where I think there's so much more exciting things to come when it comes to you know, private prescriptions in general, but for us in terms of digitizing this process.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously this is not available through the NHS at the moment. It's a privatized platform. How do you, I suppose, you know, if you're a patient and, you know, or you know someone who could potentially benefit, I mean, how do you normally sort of have people approach you? Is it through your website, or how do they kind of, where are you findable?
So we have patients from different that are coming from different areas. We do have patients that are contacting us directly on our website, and there's a lot of people who don't know what to do when you're at the end of the road, when you've already tried all the medications available for you on the NHS, and you're like, it still doesn't work for me. Then people go through to certain extremes, and sometimes they don't know what to do. They just contact us on our website and be like, maybe I could be eligible. Can you tell me more about this? And I will always take my phone. I will always spend time with any patients that are trying to reach out directly to try to help them and figure out if they are eligible, if it is the right medicine for them, and how to get that medicine prescribed. That's one way. The other way is, of course, we've talked about it. We have patients that are coming to us through the 2021 project. And this pathway is very well designed. Everybody knows what they have to do. Patients see certain doctors, independent prescribers who are participating in this study. If they want to be enrolled in this study, they contact directly Drug Science. Drug Science has a long list of patients that are eligible that they can then send to certain independent prescribers, and then prescriptions come back to us. And there's other private clinics around the UK who are not participating in 2021, but still have patients who want to benefit from our medication. And we have partnerships with clinics in different areas of the UK in order to be able to fulfill those prescriptions.
Yeah, perfect. So, I mean, obviously, you know, you've done very well so far, and you know the platform's building more traction. What does the future look like? What's the kind of, I suppose, the plan to be able to provide this method of care for so many more people?
I think
Go ahead.
I think you know, if you think about the milestones we want to achieve, both as a business, but probably even more importantly for the market in the UK, because, you know, we are building the market at the same time we're actually building the business. But there's no doubt that the key milestone is just patient access. So just enabling patients to receive this medication. And, you know, it's an ambitious target, but we certainly want to achieve the 20,000 patients target by the end of 2021. And by doing so, you know, I mentioned the fact that we're really looking at developing the research and the thought leadership in this space as well. So that's going to be a key component in our model, is being able to do the approving some of the efficacy of the medication. So that's the sort of short-term goal. The long-term goal is quite clear, that we want to continue to get the personalization aspect accurate and correct for patients. But what we need to get to, I think, in the UK is that this also is available in the public healthcare system, so through the NHS. And that's a journey which is going to take a lot of time and effort, but it's something we're totally committed in doing, because that's where we think in the long term this belongs.
Yeah, absolutely, perfect. Well, look, I'll let you get on with the very important work that you're doing. If anyone does have any more questions or anything like that, or wants to find out a little bit more, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
Cellenhealth.com.
Perfect. The one-stop shop. There you go.
Exactly.
Excellent. Well, look, Ben, Eric, thank you so much for taking the time. It's really interesting. We could, talk for a lot longer, and I'm sure there will be a lot of conversations that will come off the back of this. So thank you so much for taking the time with me, and I'm excited to see what the future's got in store.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Have a good day. Well, that's a wrap for us this week then, guys. Thanks very much to Ben and Eric for taking the time out of their busy schedules to sit down and kind of give us a look inside Cellen and the good work that they're doing. They're obviously going, far above and beyond, maybe what even they thought they were setting out to do, but they're getting so much good traction on their business that it's really inspiring on loads of different levels. So if you do want to find out a little bit more about them, you can obviously go to the Cellen Health website, which I've put a link for that in the summary of this as well. There's also some really interesting articles about the recognition they're getting from people like the Mayor of London, and all sorts. If you're interested in getting in contact with me, my LinkedIn profile is probably the best place to go, so I'll chuck a link to that on here as well. But for now, stay safe, enjoy the nice weather, and I'll see you next time.